Well, we continue with news and views this morning, and we are now focusing on the Ugandan elections, which is widely seen as a test of the 81-year-old president of Uganda, the ability to display his political strength and also avoid any unrest that has rocked its neighbors, Tanzania, Kenya, and obviously there is a lot of speculation with regard to his eventual succession. And we are now joined by Dr. Olumide Fafore, who has a PhD in politics and international studies from the University of KwaZulu-Natal, and also a researcher and political scientist. Dr. Olumide, good morning to you, sir, and welcome to the show.
Yeah, good morning, sir. It's
Yes,
nice to be here.
yes, wonderful having you around. And obviously, African elections are a very interesting dynamic, always that seems to be playing out and always riddled with a lot of questions. And particularly looking at President Yoweri, again, to extending his rule into what is a fifth decade. So we're talking of close to 50 years. And we've seen the elections that has taken place, and also at the same time followed by an internet blackout, and all of this at the end of the day playing out. But this is not something new or something unique to Uganda. It seems to be an African problem.
Yeah, I think you have said it all. Anytime, especially during election period, especially African countries that have sit-tight leaders or leaders that wants to come back for the second tenure, according to the constitutional processes. It's always a do or die affair. It's always manipulation. It's always intimidation, like what we are seeing in Uganda since yesterday or before even the election. Is quite a norm in several African countries because the leaders wants to keep hold of power and they go through every devices, every means, every mechanism for them to hold on. So what we are seeing in Uganda is something that is not new to Africa. I think it's also part of the African culture, especially in East, in Central, and in West Africa. I think the only place where we have less of this thing is in the Southern region. So it's not new what we are seeing in Uganda, and we have been seeing in Uganda since 1986 when Yoweri Museveni came to power, and we are seeing it the first, the second, the third, now the seventh term. So it's not something new.
Well, certainly, and I think considering Africa, and we've got a relatively young population on the African continent, and I'm sure Uganda also has got a relatively young population, and we've seen attempts that have been made previously as well. The constitution needs to be changed to remove age and term limits, and it just appears as if people like Museveni, would like to hold on to power right till the very end. And this obviously is not going down well with as far as succession planning is concerned, but also looking at the greater population of Uganda in terms of governance. And again, sometimes because of the age limit, these are definite concerns that, what is the long-term political future of this country, particularly when you have leaders holding on to power.
Yeah, like we saw the last election where the younger candidate of the NUP, Bobby Wine, was able to acquire 35% of the votes, despite reports of rigging, oppression, intimidation of voters. And you know that right now Uganda has more of the younger population, and the NUP, which is the opposition party, has more of the young voters. But we need to know that the power of the incumbency is still very, very much alive in Africa. And we saw what happened with the issue of the blockage of the internet. That's because the most people on the internet are the younger ones. So I think they are just trying to block the messages, the coalition, the unity, or the spread of we want a younger candidate, and I would prefer Bobby Wire to the much older Yoweri. So yes, it's still there, and like you said, it will take time because it's a year old man, 81 years. If he comes to power again, he'll be in his 80s, and you can see that Uganda under Museveni has not really developed. So I believe that they need a change. They need a more younger candidate, a more braver one that can relate to the realities across the world.
Well, certainly, and also you talk of realities across the world, but also the realities of the African continent, which is absolutely critical because we know the continent has been riddled with strife, with hunger, with poverty, with starvation, and we see what is taking place in Sudan as well, in Darfur in particular as well, where we see a humanitarian access is worsening by the day as well. There's just so much problems on the continent, and again requiring leadership on the continent, irrespective of which country the leader is coming from. But at the end of the day, putting the continent first and also addressing the problems and the challenges that the continent is faced with, like the case of South Sudan.
Yeah, like in the case of Sudan and even Ethiopia, I think the problem lies in the weakness of the African Union. Because if you look at it, the African Union major power is relies within the head of government, yes, and they are the ones that take the major decisions. And if you look at the leaders in the African Union, many of them are leaders that are spent more than 30 years, more than 20 years. So they all share the same ideology. And if you look at it, it's like what they say is like an injury to one is an injury to another. So they are all trying to protect their power. They are also trying to protect their government. So it's like if, for instance, now a government is trying to interfere in the issue in Sudan or in the issue in Ethiopia or the case in Uganda, it will also backfire to him. So they don't want to start the precedents like what we see in Sudan for over 1,000 days now. There've been war, there have been starvation, there have been destabilization, there have been killings, there have been humanitarian, people have been displaced. And although countries like Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and United Arab UAE are trying to bring in peace and broker peace together with the United States, but you can see that all those countries also have economic interest in Sudan, access to the Red Sea, access to the because of the geopolitical structure of Sudan. So the real issue is this: if what is the real interest in bringing about peace? Because peace can only be achieved where there's no underlying interest in it. So, like what is happening in South Sudan is not good for Africa. Like we can also see Democratic Republic of Congo and other regions of the world, Mozambique and the rest. So, without peace, Africa cannot actualize its full potentials.
Well, certainly, and also, Dr. Olumide, what we have seen is over a period of time, wherever these elections are taking place on the African continent, there appears to be, and perhaps you can correct me if I'm wrong, but there appears to be the notion that not many leaders are even especially in the build up to the elections, in the campaigning during the elections, are putting the challenges of the African continent as part and parcel of their campaign as well, and not giving priority to what is happening on the continent in general.
Yes, you are right. Because if you look at the resume of most of those leaders, they've never really impacted on the people who they govern. And mostly what they've done is to surround themselves with corrupt politicians who are also involved in corrupt practices, and they see the leader as also a means for them to also retain their positions, maybe in the legislative, in the municipality, even in the judiciary. So now the focus, instead of the focus to be on food, on infrastructure, unemployment. For instance, Uganda has a large unpopulated, unemployed youth. Yes, but the focus is not there. The focus is on Africa, not on that particular country. So a leader that has never really brought in development has nothing to offer, has nothing to tell the people for him to retain himself. So that is why they begin to bring in sentimental issues, other issues that has no impact on their country, like what we are seeing in Uganda, for instance. Instead of the ruling party to be talking about growth, to be talking about employment, to be talking about industrialization, to be talking about benefits, human empowerment, and the rest, all what they are talking is seeing the opposition party as an enemy and trying to say external people are trying to sabotage, are trying to bring in terrorism, are trying to destabilize, are trying to pass misinformation, instead of going to campaign and campaign with reformation policies and how will is coming back benefit the people of his country. And it's the same in most African countries, especially period of election campaigning.
Well, certainly, and also I think what is the biggest concern is the unrest that the outcomes of these elections are accompanied by. Because once the outcome is announced, we've seen what has happened in Mozambique not very long ago, and how people had taken to the streets, and it took a long time, and obviously the country paid a huge price as a result of the unrest when the election outcomes of the election results. And we've seen again where people like Bobby Wine talking about telling Ugandans to rise to the occasion, to reject a criminal regime. On the other side, Museveni warning that security forces would deal firmly with any election day protests. And I'm sure even post-election, when the results are announced as well. And all of this obviously adding, to the gravity of the situation because leaders just want to hold on to power.
Yes, you are right, because like from observers that are on ground in Kampala and in other parts of Uganda, there are reports of heavy presence of the Uganda Defense Force, heavy presence of the Uganda police forces. So all those ones is to instill fear into the people, and also to preemptive of any further demonstration. And even before the election, there were a series of demonstration, protests, and all. And we saw how protesters were being intimidated, were being beaten up, were being harassed. So I think the government of Museveni knows that this election, the outcome of the election, will also result into a protest, a widespread demonstration. That is why the army and everything, and that is something that is precedent in most African countries, especially in West and East Africa, where during election the military are out in force, and that is to instill fear into the people, and also as to use it as a power of occupancy to make sure that nothing goes wrong to the returning president, and it can still consolidate and hold on to power. So I think that is just the issue. Surely there'll be demonstration, because according to what we're also hearing, this election is not free and fair. According to Bobby Wine, at the end of the day, the election we know where the election is going. It's going to favor the incumbent. But at the end of the day, I know there will still be a widespread protest. But what the government is trying to do is to minimize those protests and also bring out full power of the military to install fear into the citizens.
Yes, well, Doc, thank you very much for that, and also for taking time out with us this morning right here on Solar Media. We wish you all the best.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Appreciate.
PhD in Politics and International Studies from UKZN, researcher and political scientist, Dr. Olumide Fafore, joining us this morning. We're going to go for a break. Next up, it's Juma Inspirations.
A